And we're live. Hello, I'm here with Lady Heather Hall. And how are you today, Heather?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here. Very honored that you would ask me to come on board.
Good. I'm very glad to have you. Let me just say hello to everybody in the chat. Pull it up on my phone because it's always better here. So we have Elemental Cardamancy. We have Gerald from Taros Dash. And it looks like that's it at the moment. But hopefully more people join us as the notification comes out.
No worries.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
You've been a member of Barely Balanced Tarot Group for a while.
For a few months now. Somebody over there found me, and it's been fun to be on board with you folks.
Oh, good. It was probably Chris, I think. Chris probably found you.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
But I never actually spoken to you. I always get nervous with these kind of interviews because I'm like, if I've never met somebody, never spoke to them, it's kind of like there's this little mystery attached to it. But you seem very nice, so I'm very relieved by that. And, I really just appreciate it. I'm sorry.
I over the last about a year ago, I chipped a tooth. It's not really a chipped tooth; it's a repair from when I was a teenager, and it broke. And since we've been wearing face coverings, it's like, oh, I'll worry about that later. So y'all get to see my broken tooth. I'm so sorry.
Oh, whatever. You look beautiful. You look fine.
Thank you.
But I'm really happy to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And I actually came across you. I saw an article by, I think it was either an article or a post by Cheryl Smith.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's like the devil for me because I always see her post about like a new deck, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's going to cost me, And she was saying something like, I'm really looking for historic decks that are hand drawn by artists, and so I was like, wow, that's really interesting and unique. And then I saw your art, and I was in love. So. Yeah, I'm really intrigued. So first off, let's, if you don't mind, maybe tell people, who is Lady Heather Hall?
Thank you. Because a little bit of my own background might be helpful in this situation. I might not have quite the same background as a lot of other people involved in this historical pursuit. I am a member of the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism. We are living history medievalists. Sometimes I will describe it like a LARP with very strict medieval rules. It is kind of a LARP. It doesn't have a goal in the way that conventional games do, but we do put on a persona, if you will. And I sell playing cards. I've kind of fallen into it. I didn't decide one day that I was going to be, and they're not exactly strict about persona play, but it's a fun group. And, unfortunately, our big event of the year, which is called Pensic, that's held about an hour north of Pittsburgh every summer. And that's my big event. I sell a lot of my product there. And we haven't been able to do it, unfortunately. But hopefully next year. And meanwhile, when I'm not doing that, and I do sell, obviously I sell packs of cards, but when I'm not doing that, I also work for a certain international health food grocer that focuses on foods that are whole. And they've been a good employer to me for about 13 years, especially in earlier years. This is a company that was very good about educating us on the kind of product that we sell, and the kind of product they sell, and the kind of product integrity that they adhere to. It's one of the things that I'll defend that employer on, the labeling integrity, the product integrity, the sourcing integrity of products that they sell, especially in the supplement department. They're very, very good about it. So if you see that brand at that store, and I know where to get it for a better price or something, the brand has been scrutinized carefully. And I also get a discount from the company, and I really and truthfully, I'm not a desk job person. I know that doesn't make sense because I'm an artist. but I like to unload the truck at night. So I'm a snake oil merchant, and no, sometimes.
I love that though. I know I saw that in your bio. I was like, I saw that you had an interest in perfume and tonics.
I study. I have a collection of like commercial. Hold on. I got one right here. I collect commercial grade perfume bottles, or I did for a very, very long time, and then I got into the history of that. My grandfather had my grandfather got his Egyptology degree from the Oriental Institute, and I inherited a number of his books. So his office when I was a child was this magical wizard's cavern, right? So I am a little bit of a history nerd, and
Me too.
like I said, my employer is wonderful at, like I said, keeping us informed about tomfoolery in the supplement industry. I've also spent time, and this is where it gets really weird. You ready for me to get really weird?
Get weird as one. I love weird.
I've been a magician's assistant. I can swallow swords. I can hammer nails into my head. I have walked on swords. I have performed an illusion called the bullet catch. I am not the catcher. I am the one pulling the trigger. But I have kept the company of professional magicians, and they really do teach you to think about things a little differently. And I'm very grateful for their insight. But all right, that's kind of beside the point. Like I said, I've gotten into this history group, and it's a very relaxed group. Participation can fluctuate a little bit depending on where you live, but they're really all over the world. I live in the Middle Kingdom. I live in the Chicago metropolitan area. And I am the signet for my local community, meaning that when their excellencies of the community want to acknowledge people with a nice scroll saying you did well, it's my job to make sure that that's been taken care of. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really nerdy group of people with, although, some people study Vikings, some people study Franks, some people study Roman. It used to be 600 to 1600. Nowadays it's up to 1600. So what that means for my playing card studies is I kind of cut it off at about 1600, 1650. So I do geek out about things later than that time period. I collect modern playing card packs like lots of folks. I collect modern tarot. I collect what I like to refer to as esoteric tarot. And so does my husband. Curious coincidence, both my husband and I, once upon a time, would read tarot in bars in the Chicago metropolitan area.
I'm so happy to hear that you're a tarot reader. I wasn't sure if you were.
Yeah.
I knew that you were interested in tarot, but I wasn't sure if you were coming at it from a completely historic perspective or if you were, actually interested in the cards, which is...
Well, I have studied, like I said, the esoteric from like I said, I read it in, I used to read it in a bar in the western suburbs, and I did $1 a card, 5 card minimum, because the crowd was kind of cheap. That was the way I got money home. I'm a fan. My personal preference for doing readings is the cat people.
Okay.
I like her art. Every card, personal bug up my butt. And why, yes, I am entitled to have an opinion. I like it when every card is thought out as much as every other card. I've seen some tarot where the major arcana is very carefully thought out, and then the minor is like an afterthought. And it bothers me. So the cat people is one of the packs where I feel like every card has just as many little paint points as every other point, has as much consideration. So I like that deck. I like that pack. I like to use the word pack. A little more international. Americans use deck. But I'm a playing card person. And what happened many years ago is I had knee surgery. I have 2 matching new ACLs, and when having the left done, I could not take a step for 6 weeks. So I fell down a rabbit hole, and it was playing cards. And the connection I made is that the majority of people on the planet can make a playing card connection. They played with their grandma, they played with family, they played it in the lunchroom at school. We all can connect with them somehow, and there's a story there. You look at, a modern bicycle pack, and that king of diamonds, he's going to be like that. That's the way it is. Why? So my personal, the thing I really geek out about is the genealogy, is the taxonomy, the, how are the patterns related to each other? Where did they come from? And so in the context of the SCA, that's really like say maybe 1500 to 1600, there's this wonderful golden age. And I would even start it earlier than that, of the development of playing cards and their patterns, and why certain communities play with certain types of playing cards, why some packs have sticks and swords and cups and coins versus having spades and hearts and diamonds. I even did a bit, hold on, I'll show you. I even did this big wonderful map to point it out. And this is, so I could show people at a living history event without having to pull out, say, my, no,
I got you. Hold on. Oh, I'm trying to get you to. There we go.
So this is. Don't worry about the details too much. I can't get too close, but this is my map that shows how the cards developed from all the way over here with Mamluk style cards entering Europe to ultimately what we end up with as a modern poker deck. But with the way I the way I laid this out, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you wouldn't necessarily be able to point out the tarot. And they're, of course, right in with the Italian. And there's several different kinds in there, including like Burgundy, or not Burgundy, Bolognese tarot, which is a very interesting, because they have their own political history. Yeah. So do the cards, and that's part of the reason why.
Was that where the term Tarocchino, didn't it come from Bologna? Was that were they the ones that invented that term?
My pack that you have, I call it Tarocchi for 2 reasons. Number one, Tarocchi is the term that they say for playing cards, or for that type of deck.
Yes.
Number 2, my mundane surname is Rocky, and it's Italian, so it's Rocchi. Yeah. Not to give everybody too much information about myself, but that's where that comes from. And yeah, when you get Italian pronunciations, usually the CCH is pronounced like a K. It doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to English speakers, but
wait, the C double C I is pronounced as a K.
Well, if you have 2 C's and no H, that's pronounced like we would with an H. So like Medici. Right. But if there's CCH, then you pronounce it like Pinocchio.
Right.
So it's
the Z's are cool too, because the double Z's are like like pizza, for instance.
Yeah. No. And that's the way, and they pronounce single Z's that way too. Although there's a lot of different, as hard as Mussolini tried to unify the languages, there's a lot of different. My grandmother and my grandfather, not the one with the Egyptology degree, the ones that came over, they both had very, very different accents, very different. And my grandfather would tease my grandmother for the way she spoke. So I don't. I'm not a native speaker, obviously. Yeah. I've lived my life in this area.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in South Philadelphia, so I know all about the Italian things. My neighbors were from Italy. My grandmother's like 100% Sicilian, but I'm mostly Irish. At least you're either Irish or Italian where I grew up from, even though I'm like English and Scottish and a whole bunch of other stuff and like a little Italian. you're either Irish or Italian where I grew up. Like even if you're English, they're like, oh, he's an Irish guy.
There's the South
just
Side
how
of
it works.
Chicago's like that too, and my parents were both raised on the South Side. My mom's family is kind of North Sider, but my father's family was immigrants, but that's where they immigrated to, is the South Side of Chicago.
Yeah. Well, we have a similar background because we're both, come from that immigrant city kind of background thing, which is really a big part of who I am. I mean, growing up where I grew up, it was a very interesting place and a lot of different cultures and a lot of interest. As Jim Croce was from South Philly, and he was famously quoted, "There's a lot of strange characters lurking in those doorways in South Philly," because it's very true. I mean, it's just.
I'm a fan of his work. Yeah. He was.
I just want to say hello to everybody walking into the room too, because I didn't. Regina, we got Deanne, Ben is here, Zane, Kristen Louise, Neem. Hello, Neem. Let's see here. And I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, also, if you guys have a question for Heather, just try and put it on all caps. Hi, Patrice. How are you? Just seeing Patrice just walked in. That's a really interesting to hear about how you got into the cards. But I was, like I said, relieved to hear that because you pretty much hit like a lot of the questions I had prepared in your opening statement. But it was great. But I was going to ask you if you were into cardmancy, because I wasn't quite sure.
So because of the nature of how I approach things from, again, the history nerd, the SCA point of view, for those who didn't hear me say that, I'm a Laurel in the Society for Creative Anachronism. I'm a peer. They will acknowledge that it's like their highest, Eagle Scout Award kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like being a knight, except I'm not a fighter. I'm an arts and sciences person. But and my good friend, who we call in the society, we call Dr. Henry Best. He's the gentleman I send people to when they have questions about more of its esoteric application. Not so much because I don't look these things up and study them, but because I kind of want to keep what I do. I tell people I'm a card maker. So my focus is, what does the card maker think he's doing? And usually what that means is, in a nutshell, I tell people, as a card maker, I'm making a gaming console that doesn't plug in. But my friend Dr. Best will tell you that probability theory was not a thing in those days. So your game console was also a way of consulting the gods, so to speak. You articulate that as you care to for your spirituality of choice. Obviously, most of Europe at that point was Christian. But yes, there were in some areas taboos, and in some areas there were not. Every now and then someone says, "Didn't the church ban it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, and they're in the museums. What do people played it anyway? So what?" Yes, there were bonfires of the vanities where people did destroy their game systems, not just cards, but backgammon tables, sets of dice, other things, and apparently by the thousands, although I have not confirmed the accuracy of those claims, but I'm going to trust him. So obviously their acceptability is kind of a where and when, but obviously they were wildly popular. And again, I'm making a gaming console. My focus as the card maker, as someone who has a print shop, and wants to optimize how much money I can get out of my print shop. And I have a small apartment. I do not have a print shop here. I have my stuff made downtown. I used to sometimes do packs by hand, but the 24-hour print shop that was that is still across the street, they updated their printers and they won't handle my thicker cardstock. They
Oh,
took my babies and replaced them with
I know that's a nightmare. Trust me, I know all about it. I really do because
I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
But I have a downtown shop doing my regular runs of packs, and so I kind of take it from an Albert Drewer point of view. Albert Drewer never printed a darn thing. He went over to the shop and said, "Hey, I got this cool picture of a rhinoceros that I drew. Would you print me 2,500 copies?" And they said, "All right, Mr. Drewer, we'll see you on Tuesday." That's how he did that. And so the shop is now going to work on optimizing, giving the customer the product that they want, maintaining their quality integrity because they could afford to, and making sure they get every penny out of every print. And the more prints we make, the more money we make. Now, with playing cards, again, this didn't happen so much with tarot, but with playing cards, eventually you start getting into tax stamps. The Spanish started it in 1605, I think. King James started it in England. It was 6 shillings. That's like about $5. Can you imagine paying $5 for a pack of bicycle cards? Just the tax. Never mind.
I know. It was a nightmare.
So the poor card makers, in the meanwhile, are making 3 pence a pack, and they go to the king and they're like, "We will starve." And the king says, "Oh, don't worry, we'll ban the imports." Meanwhile, his people are at the port, taking money hand over fist so that the imports come on the market anyway. The king is just rolling in it. It took the French another century to figure out that their neighbors to the north and south were doing this. But ultimately, when the tax stamp happens, the print shops need to figure out how to trim the fat, if you will, because suddenly that takes an enormous chunk out of their ability to be competitively priced.
Yeah.
So the first thing that goes is the talent. And that's when you end up seeing playing cards that look a little more like the accidental cubism that we see today on modern poker cards. But again, the tarot didn't necessarily go through that.
Yeah, it seems like they were kind of, because I actually just made a video on the Paris card makers, and I was talking all about the playing card ghettos and all the taxes and stuff. But I found that there are a lot of exemptions when it came to tarot, which was interesting.
Neapolitan clubs of Ace of Clubs, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just saying that people don't realize like the whole tax thing, and like in France, I know that they had to pay taxes on the paper before they even print it. So that means if they made any mistakes, at least this is just my guess, but if they made mistakes, they would have to pay for it. They would still have to pay taxes on mistakes.
And either way, the good news is that the paper can be recycled. And that's how a lot of these survive. A lot of the cards that I've worked on, and if I may interject with that one, I reconstruct packs of cards, and they're not just necessarily a tarot. I do have a tarot. I've worked on other tarot which have not come to fruition at this point for various reasons. For example, one of them, and I'm totally tangent. You've seen other cards, other tarot packs made with these fragments, but I didn't. These are the fragments that are in. Is
that the Venetian one there?
Yeah, and these fragments are in Budapest. So
I have that deck in my hand too. It's so funny.
I love that. But you've had a chance to study it, and the neatest cards in that pack are cards like, this is the Ace of Clubs. He's a wild man. Here's the Knight of Clubs. He's riding on a man-faced critter. What the heck is that all about? And to do these, I couldn't make it as a tarot. And really what it comes down to is, as a tarot, what card is this?
Did you have it's probably Queen of Cups, right?
That is a king of cups.
Oh, okay, but she's a female in this deck. That's right.
That's the problem, is that it would be hard to tell that from the Queen of Cups. But in the way that the fragments were laid out in the Budapest fragments, these are all on the same sheet. And in order to make it a tarot, would to be a little more of a Frankenstein pack.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a thing that I want. I want it to be less of a Frankenstein pack. And I know there's a tarot in there somewhere. It was like, but wait, I want this pack. And yeah, I don't know if you all picked up on this. This is a King of Cups. The suit of cups is considered feminine. I assume you all know that. So that's the king from this particular pack. And I sell this pack based on the Budapest fragments. That's my pack.
Okay. I didn't realize this was on the Budapest. So this is the Budapest Tarot, basically, but it's a play card.
Knight.
I never put that together, actually.
Yeah, isn't that far out? This is a weird deck.
Yeah.
And this is the Jack, and it's a woman, so cups are feminine. Meanwhile, and apparently the numbered cards are laid out like very early, like some Mamluk fragments are.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why I wanted to make this pack, is it has some very early connections. My collectors want as early of cards as possible for their persona play. That's the King of Swords comparably, who is obviously very manly and wears armor. You'll notice in the Taraki, the Rosenwald style Taraki, that the kings and queens of sticks and swords, I say sticks, I'm sorry, they're wearing armor, both the kings and the queens, whereas the kings and queens of cups and coins are not, and the kings and the kings of cups and coins have their legs covered. So there is definitely an implication of feminine and masculine in these packs. The Spanish apparently were playing a game called Hombre, and this game had a certain amount of, I think it was Hombre. Forgive me, I've been out of touch for the last year and a half. Working in a grocery store means that it's been a little stressful. So I've just been kind of, to the ground with doing that sort of thing. I'm a little rusty. I'm sorry. But they played a game where and that's part of the reason that the French pattern, the French suit signs that poker users use, became a thing, because the makers in southern France, of course, were trying to compromise. We got the German players over here who don't really care about a gender thing with their suit signs, whereas the Spanish players specifically need a binary, not necessarily gender, but binary in their game. And the French suit solved that problem while cutting cost. And that's what fascinates me so much, is that some unnamed genius came up with this system. And it could have been a woman for all we know, because we know that I have some packs from Spain where the same pattern, one known to be made by a man who is descendant from other men that made the cards, and another made by a woman, and her name appears nowhere on the cards. It's possible women were just less likely to have their names on them for various reasons. So it's, and I don't mean to be feminism, it's possible out of necessity.
It's totally fine with me.
Well, it's not an attempt to be, on that. It's like I said, it's an attempt to say, because of the pressure of necessity in the situation. Let's say I am a woman in that time period, and suddenly some jerk preacher comes through preaching bonfires of the vanities. I've got to run. And those printing plates are heavy. They're pearwood, because pearwood doesn't have cross fibers. So they can last and last and last and last and last. But if I'm a small European woman, I can't just grab dozens of these and run. Whereas the French pattern means one plate. That's it.
Yeah.
So my cost.
For the people who don't, because there's some people in the chat that may not know what you mean by French suit. So Could you maybe explain the differences between the historically?
I'll pull up my map again.
Okay, good. If I can get you in the big screen again, let's see.
And again, this was made with SCA history people in mind. So I've got a big map of Europe here. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting the whole thing in, but essentially, the people who were in southern France have a market of Spanish suits coming from one end and German suits coming from the other end. And to be able to cater to both markets is a lot of printing plates, because every card in the pack requires a xylograph, the black lined print. The colors were added in by stencil usually, and in the early days, they were finger painted on. I've got one of those. I'll show it to you. So some genius in this area said, "I've got an idea. We'll take the shapes of the German suits, and we will color code them boy, girl, like the Spanish want to see, that binary system. That way, we have one printing plate, one xylograph, one expensive piece of pear wood that's easy, again, to transport, that's simply less investment in the first place. And because I'm not spending money on printing plates, I can add more colors. I can have a more sophisticated printing plate in the first place. You notice that my the Tarot, the Rosenwald Tarot, the images are a little simple and crude compared to, say, some late period French style ones, which are can get very, very detailed. And it's because, again, there's only one plate with 12 cards. So the investment is different. And then now that I only have one plate and all of the other cards are a stencil, I could cut, if I have a sharp knife, I can cut those out in a night or two. And so boy, girl, but in the German shapes. Now, this shape is not a circle. Like, these are a circle. These are hawk bells, or these are oros, or I'm blanking on the other term. They're coins, denari. A circle is hard to cut with a sharp knife out of, say, hide or tin or copper or something like that. But a diamond shape is very easy to cut. So that shape evolved simply because, and I'll close up my little triptych here. The spade is broken, but you can see here, I'll turn it on its side. You see how they parallel. But that is how the French suit signs came to be. And obviously it's not.
Never knew that. That's amazing. I never
obviously translate. So you can use French Tarot for divination if you care to, but they're obviously intended to companion a certain game. And the earlier Tarots, I will never ever suggest that they weren't used for divination, because they were. We just don't have as much detail about it. Yeah. As a card maker, this is kind of my cop out, right?
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, everybody used any, games, dice, cards. They were all used for divination.
Melting wax, whatever. Yes.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
As a card maker, I make a game console. What you do with it when it goes home with you, that's something else. So as a card maker, I don't worry so much about the details on the numbered cards, because my thought is that market wants to see the numbered cards. And that doesn't mean that people didn't find other meaning in them. It just means that as that card maker who's worried about getting every penny as possible out, that's the most practical solution at the time. So that's why packs look like that.
Kristen had a comment. She said, I don't know anything about playing cards. And she's talking from a tarot point of view, but actually this applies to tarot too, Kristen. And a lot of people don't realize, but the French cards that you see, the Tarot de Marseille or any tarot suit, basically we're using the Italian suit systems, right? I mean, it was basically, the staves, the coins, cups, and
they come in looking like these. wait. I'm terrible at that. Those are the Mamluk Caliphate was playing with cards that had these kinds of suit signs. So we have coins and polo sticks and scimitars and a suit called Tumen. Tumen means myriad, but it looks like cups. And then they go into Italian suits. And when you compare the Italian suits with the Mamluk suits, they look strikingly familiar. This is exactly what I see. Here's a fun fact I discovered. For those of you that are familiar with Mamluk cards, they're kind of large. This is a pack of cards that I've done. These are often called the Mariska cards. They are finger painted. They were found in Seville. They date to maybe 1390, maybe 1400. It's an ace of swords. It's kind of weird. Suits of coins. Here is an ober of coins. He's wearing kind of a houppelande, isn't he? Here's the knight, which would be a queen rank of coins. He's also wearing kind of a German houppelande. King of coins. And then there is the ace of coins. And look, he's got an Italian hat. So where the heck is this deck from? It was found in Seville, but we have German costumes on it. So it could have been made anywhere. But what I discovered about this pack was I put them next to, I have 2 copies of the Mamluk cards. And when I put them side by side, this was exactly the same size as one of the Mamluk cards, 2 of these together, as if folded in half. A friend of mine who also is an SCA nerd in Colorado, he's been studying Mamluk paper lately, and they used to keep notebooks with them that were exactly this size. Wow. So a little tidbit there.
You don't have any Mamluk cards, do you? I'm looking for a set. I can't find them anywhere.
There is a pack that was made in the early 70s that is a run of 750. Occasionally they come up on eBay. There are a couple, and I'll see if I can find you a link. There have been a couple of Kickstarter ones. Pardon me.
I sold them, but I missed out on it. I did see it.
I'm working on one, but mine is a little different. The ones that I've seen available are based on either the fragments at the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul, or they are made off of the pack that was made in the 70s. Now, the pack that was made in the 70s goes with the theory that the Topkapi fragments feature 4 court cards per suit. I'm not in the camp that agrees with that assessment. I am in the camp that says that there are 2 packs of Topkapi cards that have been intermingled. And the reason that they're the same size, again, is because they're that notebook size. But there was a lot of discussion, of course, as to whether or not the Topkapi fragments are based off of Tarot versus is Tarot based off the Topkapi. And the Topkapi ones are 15th century, so they're not old enough to say, oh, these are too old. There's a fragment that was found that was older than that. It's like a fourth of a card. It's like nothing.
Yeah.
I would like to replicate that pack because then, and remember, I cater to a living history group.
Yeah.
Because then I can offer a pack to my Viking friends.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be an old, and it wouldn't be stepping on, I don't like stepping on other people's toes. I don't like working on packs that other people have done.
Yeah.
I like selecting packs that are missing pieces. Either the colors didn't get filled in or there's jacks missing or something like that. That's
there's so many to be done. I mean, there's so many of those.
And I can keep going. I've done about 30 at this point. Not all of them are available at this time. I've done about 30 different packs. And
I would love to see you do some more tarot decks, Heather. I would, you know what I mean?
I want to give you more. Now, the good news is that there's a lot of interest in tarot. So a lot of them are already out there. And
Yeah, but what you said, I think you hit the hammer on the nail, or whatever the saying is. Like, because there are these decks that are unfinished. Like, for instance, Marco Benedetti did the Charles VI deck, which was missing a few. You have a lot of the early, like, Visconti decks that are all missing stuff, and there's all sorts of decks that are missing pieces that nobody wants to do because everybody's sort of like a historic purist, but you have a certain liberty to your art style,
So Marco messaged me via my blog about getting one of my tarot. And meanwhile, I had been trying to set up my website and completely ignored my blog. And I didn't get back to him. And so meanwhile, he's like, well, fine, I'll make my own Rosenwald deck. But he was trying to get mine. So I'm sorry, Marco, I didn't mean to blow you off. But the good news is that now he made one as well.
I have his Rosenwald here.
I have his as well. And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you another dirty secret. I was contemplating putting them up side by side. And I said, the way we solved problems is so different. I don't want it to be, like, I don't want it to be comparing quality or anything like that. I wanted, he studied it differently than I did.
Yeah.
I did pen and ink. And I'll tell you part of the reason I do them all with my own hand. I feel like when I do them and I do everything pen and ink, the only time graphics programs get involved is when I say to the shop, okay, here's my one drawing for the backs. Would you repeat it for all the backs, please? That's when graphics design gets involved.
Marco's listening.
Hi, Marco. I love your card so much, and I swear to God, I'm so sorry I didn't answer your email.
No, but what's amazing is you both, they're so unique, both of them. They're vastly different decks. I mean,
Marco, your pack sits on my coffee table.
They're just so different. You know what I mean? I own both, and I liked both versions. You know what I mean?
I'll give you another reason I did them by hand. Because of the nature of patterns, you can't trademark the work.
Yeah.
So if they're mine, then I can. And I do tend to like to add some personal touches. I did a pack of French cards.
Do you have your Rosenwald handy? Do you want to show a few of the Rosenwald?
Maybe. If I have it, I'll show it to you.
If not, I have it. I can show some.
There's my Rosenwald.
I have it here.
In one of my French packs. In one of my French packs, I noticed that one of the kings was kind of cross-eyed and kind of puckering his lips and kind of had like several chins. And when I showed it to people, they were like, oh my goodness, what is that? So I do add personal touches. And I'll give you an example of one that I made some changes because I did. Now I gotta find it. I'm gonna look through my own deck. Here. I changed her arm a little bit so that it looked a little more like a natural flexing arm. I also, because a friend of mine uses these for reading, I also took out the acanthus leaf here and added a very small lion. So there's a little Easter egg for you folks. The original has an acanthus leaf. I put a small lion there. And yeah, her arm is a little plumper and the muscle is on the inside of her arm instead of out. But those are the decisions, the kind of decisions that I make with these. And again,
I like that.
Then I know you copied mine because Marco did his differently. Everybody copies this. Everybody interprets these missing things a little bit differently. Yeah. So it means that if I had copied Marco's pack, people would but he did it that way. So we would know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think if you're going to take liberties, like in a deck, like if you do take on a deck that, for instance, has missing cards, you either have to patch things together, like Marco did with the Charles VI, which I thought was really great, and I learned a lot. Yeah, and I learned a lot from that, like just historically and all. But the way your style is, I think, like taking liberties and making it your own, sort of basing it on the history, is also valuable. I feel like from a historical standpoint, but it also is like your deck. You know what I mean? It gives you a certain kind of liberty, which I appreciate about your cards. So,
well, and again, history nerd mindset in a role-playing kind of situation. The patterns are, by definition, not exclusively anyone's. And the Rosenwald pack, here was one of the problems I had with the Rosenwald pack. There's at least 2 manufacturers in the fragments that survive. You have one pack that the coins look kind of like these. And in the other sheet, the coins are totally different. So if I replicate it exactly, I'm replicating 2 different manufacturers. That's not something that would have been done then. Yeah. So you see my conundrum. So my solution is I will pick one of those styles. I picked the one that I thought was a little more signature of the fragments. And I made all of them that style. But that's how I solved that problem. And it is a problem because that's not how the packs would have been made. And if they were, there was a reason. Now we know that the printing plates got handed down. That did happen, and as long as they were cared for, and especially when we look at Minchiate packs in Italy, and you have ones that don't necessarily get worn out, they get used for decades and decades and decades, and the printer has no incentive to upgrade the system. So like the Italians have 16, 17 different patterns, and they've got German and they've got French and they've got Spanish and they've got Italian patterns. And I mean, I'm sure there's people who can tell you a lot more about why that is, but it doesn't change that you find the Bolognese Turo or the Bolognese Torricini. And I know somebody out there is laughing at my pronunciations. Again, I have no idea which one of my grandparents I should trust. So one of them was from Bergamo. The other one was from a teeny little town in the south, according to my grandfather from Bergamo, called Tres Fiammas. And I think it's gone. And that's what I know about my origins. But I know that my grandparents spoke completely different accents, and so I have no idea what real Italian is.
You mean the 2 that got married, your grandmother and grandfather, or?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
okay. Because the same thing happened with my grandparents too.
My father's parents were, or my father was full-blooded Italian. His parents were the immigrants. My mother's parents were immigrated. My mother's families immigrated, say, 19th century, German and French. German and English. Where did they? I can't imagine where the French would come from these days. And for those of you who don't know playing cards that well, English-speaking country playing cards are French-suited playing cards.
Yes, they are.
Because the oldest origins of the pattern, and again, think of the King of Diamonds like this. Think of the Suicide King. The oldest fragments of that pattern come from Rouen, which is in northern France. And again, my pronunciations are awful, I know that. Middle of the 1500s is when we first see.
Oh, she froze. She'll be back. Heather, where'd you go? So, Heather was just talking about the English suits and the French suits being the same. So the French suits are basically the pattern that you see in the modern playing card packs, is what she was talking about, the diamonds, the hearts, those types of things. Heather, just so you know, if you try to come in and out again, it might come back. But I know that there's been issues with this internet all day. I know Gerald had some problems, but until we get Heather back, let me just just try and add yourself in and out. I'm going to show some more of her Rosenwald. So this was actually interesting because it's a small deck. These are the backs. It's interesting because she had as an option you could add on to make it a Minchiate, so it was like extra cards. And so you have the tarot trumps, which are pretty much like this. I showed some of these already, but I'm just going to show them to you again. So you have the Hierophant, no titles on this one. Lovers. And all Heather's style is very unique. It's based on the history, but there's a lot of kind of unique details because they were hand drawn. So it's really, really interesting. But now she did add. Okay, so let me just show you the wheel. Various ones, and. So the Minchiate part is very interesting because now when you get to the tower, for instance, which is like card 16, like in a normal tarot deck, then it goes to the virtues, and so she's added. You can get actually the tarot pack. You can get even a playing card version, and you can get the Minchiate. Of course, I decided to get the Minchiate because it was interesting. Was not connected. It said it was very okay. You're good. You're back. It's okay. I even have an internet problem today. Anytime that happens, I'm right back. I was just showing your deck. I was telling them about the Minchiate add-on, with the Rosenwald.
Those are the worthy, or not the worthies. That's a different pack I'm working on. The virtues.
Yes. Where did you get these images from? Did you invent them, or did you
I have a book from a Tarot museum, and it had a number of Minchiate packs in it. And if you give me just a second, I'll go grab it.
Okay. Minchiate was a rabbit hole I just fell into, and I haven't really spent time like really researching it and like really learning it, but it's very interesting. And the term Minchiate, I didn't even know. And Marco, if you're still in the chat, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Minchiate means bullshit, actually, the word. I don't know if that was a coincidence, and that the game was sort of like a game of tricks. So I remember as a kid, there was a game called Bullshit that was...
that's a great game. So...
Let's take a look, Heather. Let's see.
That says double air. There. That's the important part.
Okay.
And let's try it that way. Chock full of good. It's all black and white, I'm afraid. And it's kind of just a museum.
Which book is that? What is it called, Heather? What book? Huh? What is that called? What is that called? Okay, Taroki. Okay. I love those kind of books, and they're always hard to get.
eBay and a little patience.
I love those because you don't have to buy 50,000 decks. You have them in a book, and you obviously can't. I'd like to try to own all the historic decks, but unfortunately, sometimes having a what do they call? What's the word for those? They're like there's a word for them. God, my brain's not working. I can't think of it. There's a word for like not a magazine, but a catalog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what that is. That's a museum
word. I couldn't remember it.
I also have a copy of Yale's playing card catalog, and that's 4 volumes. That's a big thing, and it's helpful, and it tells you what they have. But in catalogs like that, I also have the Fournier Museum's catalog, and sometimes they only show you 3 cards or 1 card, from the pack, depending on the pack. And yeah, it's frustrating. I'll tell you what. There was. I'll give you another book recommendation. The Cloisters had an exhibit a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, on medieval cards, on illuminated cards, and it's like a $25 book. It's written by darn it, the curator of the Cloisters.
Okay.
And like I said, it's only a $25 book, but the images are, high quality images. They are life size to the cards, and like the oval cards that they keep at the Cloisters. They obviously have pictures of those up close, but given the connection with early tarot and illuminated cards, there's a lot of connectivity there, especially from the card maker's point of view, because even today, I have people who come to me and say, I had a gentleman ask me for a pack for his coven. In other words, 12 copies of a custom pack. And I'm like, that's not something I'm going to be able to sell at my table. I'm going to have to charge you as for a private commission job. Do you know what that's going to cost? Because you're going to have to, I'm going to charge you as a professional artist.
Yeah.
And you realize that the price that Doge Visconti would have paid for these isn't much different than Doge Visconti's equivalent would pay for it today.
Yeah.
You get a renowned artist to, if you get Anish Kapoor to make it for you, well, never mind him, but if you get someone who charges as an artist per hour, and that's 78 cards plus backs plus tuck box, you start to look at a lot of and then you realize, like I said, my thing about, I like a finished tarot. As much as my own tarot is an old style playing tarot, I like it when every card, when the Two of Swords has as much thought put into it as the Sun does. That's when you see the wheat from the chaff. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "Hey, I've been working on a tarot too," and it's like, well, that's lovely. I can't wait to see it finished. And
it's funny because we just had somebody crashing our party talking about witchcraft, but here we are just talking about history of playing cards, and we talked about very little tarot here. And you have some of these people, they come in and they say we're practicing witchcraft. We're talking about history here. Why don't you listen to the conversation before you pass a judgment? You know what I mean? But even if we were talking about witchcraft, it'd be none of your business. So, go somewhere else.
And I'll tell you what, like I said, from a persona point of view, I'm a card maker. I don't care what you do with it once you buy it from me. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm not going to lie to you all. When I am working at the grocery store to unload a truck and get a little workout on, I work in an incredibly religious area. In fact, I work in a Guinness Book of World Records famous religious area. I work in Wheaton, Illinois, and they can be very interesting with their spirituality. So I am, and I've lived in that area my whole life. So I've got some quick with the quips kind of stuff when people approach tarot or playing cards in general with spiritual opinions one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's, again, why I say, you know what, I'm just the printer, okay? You go do what you want to do with playing cards. But the devil didn't make them, and they were, in the history group that I'm with, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, they weren't used for esoteric purposes. Well, you don't have proof of that. And in fact, I do have evidence that people were connecting them with divination.
Sure.
We know that
You could use all sorts of stuff.
So yeah, I just can't tell you that they were doing the Celtic crossbred. Sorry, I can't confirm that one, but I can tell you that that's how the world thought about things. So of course they did.
You know, I remember being a kid, and I would, before I knew even what the word divination was, before I knew anything about tarot, I would play a game with playing cards, and I would say black is yes and red is no. And it was just a natural thing that I, as a kid, wanted to do. So if I'm doing that, you know, naturally, like Nate, you know, I would try to play like games with it, and you know, people were doing that for sure. I mean, it's like we were saying before, it could be anything. It's divination, but
the nature of the construction of a pack of not tarot cards has a number of curious mathematical anomalies to it. I'm not the best at articulating it, but the nutshell I'll put it in is if you have a system that will accommodate 4 players in a card game that has something that resembles an enjoyable pace to it, it's going to have certain mathematical anomalies to it. It just does. Like I said, I'm not the one to articulate that argument, but what I find a little frustrating is when there are attributes from, say, occasionally see some numerology ones, that the Joker card is relevant to the numerology of the pack, and it's like, well, actually, Joker cards are American and Civil War era. So when the packs that the Mamluks were bringing into Europe came in, and they may have been 52 card packs, although there's argument about whether or not they were using 10s, but that finger painted pack I showed you earlier, there were no 10s found with it, and the statistical odds that someone was holding a hand with nothing but 10s in it is kind of unlikely. So we're thinking that the Spanish haven't been using 10s from the very earliest days of them using playing cards. And if your community doesn't use them, there's no point in printing them. Even the printing plates that they used in Spain, there's no room for those extra 4 cards. There just isn't. Meanwhile, the Germans weren't using aces. But in Tarot, when you're playing Tarocchi, and there's a lovely couple of books on the subject. The one I'd love to get my hands on, once I have a couple of paychecks to put together, right, is the Dumet's card. Any of Dumet's books are.
I found the digital copy.
Oh, lovely!
I'll have to email it to you.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not a print, and he's long dead, and I didn't ask questions, but I belong to a site, and I got a copy. So if I can email it to you, I will. It's been very helpful for me the last, yesterday.
Not Tarot.
Yeah, I have both. I have the one about the game rules, which was very interesting and still has a lot of history, even though it has, because it's interesting to look at the history of the game rules, because it does tell you a bit about, their uses.
And they do affect the patterns. They're not the only thing that affects the patterns, but they do influence what's going on with the patterns. And sometimes the patterns influence the games.
Yeah.
So, when we have games like Alouette, which is in southern France, sometimes it's called Lavacha, or I, again, ignore my pronunciation, but there's a cow on one of the cards. Now, which came first, the game or the cow? I don't know. But, that's for people like Michael Dumet. So, anyway.
It was funny because I was looking at the cow on the Minchiate pack, the Minchiate Ishuria by Il Menighello, and it has, I think it's the very last card in the pack of the trumps.
I think it's the Taurus.
Cow. Yeah, it's Taurus, yeah.
And
that's right.
When you get to the Minchiate my habit is to say, like,
oh yeah, Taurus the bull. I don't know why I was thinking that.
The finger painting can still be seen. And even in, let me see if I can find my own. Oh, yeah, here. In my own version of the Minchiate, like the dots, and I referenced that that book I just showed you a little bit ago. That's where I got the reference. But those dots would have been finger painted on. Yeah. And you can even tell that the pigment that they're using for the finger painting, there's another one that had some, that the pigment they're using for finger painting is different than the red that was used for the stencil. There's another one that has the dots.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie to y'all, there's another one with the dots. I do have a habit of, I don't want to correct any physiology of the figures, but again, if my test group goes, look at the expression she's making, I do tend to, tone it down a little bit. And it is, again, yet another indicator that I know that that's my version of the pattern. So yeah, I am kind of marking them as my own, but I also want to be true with the original. And if I don't know if any of you all saw, I do sell my playing card packs, and I do have a tarot, the Taraki pattern, which is based on the. I'm sorry.
I just was going to say all of your information. So all of Heather's information, her blog and her store is actually in the info section. I've already linked them. So if you're interested in taking a look at her gallery, and please do that. What are some other packs you have? Because I know you have. First off, how many do you have? Because you have quite a few in there.
I've done off and on about 30. I don't offer all of them. Like, for example, I haven't figured out how to make this one cost effective. This is from Korea.
Yeah.
And these are marked with Hangul. And then the backs have it's meant to be kind of an arrow fletching pattern on the back. I haven't figured out how to make this cost effective. The Koreans played with these types of playing cards until the Japanese introduced them to Hanafuda.
Yeah.
And then Mello, what are you doing? Oh, my cat. My cat. So I've been accused of being an Anglophile. So I have a lot of French suited packs. I don't lie. For example, I do have an early Rouen.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you. So for those who study modern poker cards, here's your king. Here's your Suicide King. He is so old. How old is he? He's so old that he is in fact from Spain, and I'll show you that card in a minute. He's a warrior. He's attacking. And that tax stamp thing, when the tax stamp comes in and suddenly the card makers have to trim the fat, well, the talent was the first thing to go. So now you end up with the cards getting distorted, in addition to some changes made to the printing systems that they used. Thank you very much. In addition to the printing systems that they used, changing a little bit, so the cards got a little wider. But the king of the Suicide King is actually holding up an axe and attacking, and eventually it just kind of got shoved behind his head. Let me find my Spanish deck here somewhere. Where are all my cards? I can't even find my own Spanish cards. But I did find my Portuguese cards. And this is a favorite deck of mine. And if you decide to buy any of these, I have to place an order like today. But I call them Cards with Dragons because all of the aces have dragons. This is what the Portuguese had with them when they showed up in Japan. So Japanese cards were then based off of these. But like good Latin suited cards, you have sticks and swords and cups and coins. This is a king of clubs, Bastos. He is seated on a throne. He has a crown. That's going to be pretty much a constant in Latin suited cards. He will almost always be on his throne, and he will always have a crown, unless he's like French Revolution era, and then he'll have a Phrygian cap. That's different. But these, and in the 19th century, they did change these. They will have a knight instead of a queen, and then oh my gosh, of course I've got this rearranged. The jacks are all maidens. They are not queens. They do not have a crown. But this is a jack or a soda, and she is slaying a dragon.
Wow.
And so is the soda of swords. And like I said, there's no crown on her head, so it is a jack. But, I mean, talk about cool cards. And the aces, this is an ace of coins. The aces all have dragons on them.
Wow. So cool.
And there's another king. This is a suit of batons. And the crown at the time that the fragment was made, this was an example of, I had every card in the pack, but the sheets were so very badly worn and rejected because they weren't printed well. So my colors are very bold, and I'm sorry, I have IKEA techno lighting going on. Sorry, hold on. Stop that. Sorry. So the head poking out, well, that would be a Habsburg, because they were in charge at the time. And so that would be batons, and then this would be swords. And notice that unlike a tarot, unlike say a Marseille tarot, they are not elliptical swords, as they would also be with the Mamluk cards. They are straight intersecting. There is, other than my own pack, there is one surviving member of this family, and it is the Sicilian tarot. So, and that's a creepy deck if you've ever gotten your hands on it. The Hanged Man is not hanging by his feet.
No.
Little.
Now I kind of wonder.
And there's a card in it called Misery.
Wow.
But there's no devil.
Is there only one deck called the Sicilian Tarocchi, or is there a couple?
I'm not sure, but you will know because, again, unlike other Southern Italian packs, Southern Italian packs are generally related to packs from Spain. So you have Cheetos and party picks instead of the intersecting swords and batons. You have these little pubs, but from the from the Sicilian ones do that intersecting just like that tarot, or just like the dragon cards. Excuse me, and my goodness, I can't find anything. These.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Litty guys are the ones that the Japanese based off of those Spanish or the Portuguese ones, and the Portuguese ones being Portuguese, they were also made in Amsterdam and may have been considered an export pattern. Oh, thank you. And I'll tell you about the Dijon. The Dijon is a pack that the xylograph, the black lines, come from Burgundy pre-1500, but the colors come from a Florentine pack that dates to about 1630. Not pre-1500, pre-1600, just pre-1600 in Burgundy. And the colors come from a pack that came from Florence in about 1630. I need a sip of water.
I'll take your time, don't worry.
So these cards are based on those dragon cards I just showed you. Okay. They are still made, although sometimes they're considered black market because it's generally.
Where did the Japanese get them from, though? You were starting to say the Japanese got them from where? Was it the Portuguese?
From the Portuguese. They saw the dragon cards that I just showed you. And it's interesting because look at the size difference between the two. And because I always make my cards the correct size, the size to the museum fragments. This is the size of the Portuguese cards that the sailors would have had. These are the size of what the Japanese had. So the thinking, if I understand correctly, is because these are sharp-cornered cards, as they were in period. Now, they would have been wrapped in period. I don't. Marco can tell you about how much time and labor it is to wrap cards. They had children do it. According to Marco, they had children doing it.
Yeah, they did.
It's that kind of detail work. But when you're playing at sea for months and months at a time, your cards get a little dog-eared, so they would trim them a little bit. So the thinking is that by the time the Japanese saw them, they were already trimmed down heavily, which would explain why cards like the 5 of coins have the coins all shoved in the corners like that. Now, when the band hammer comes down in Japan, it comes down hard. So they started changing the faces dramatically, and they continue to play poker. Meanwhile, the Germans would change one rule in the game and then completely change the name of the game. So, are you guys playing this game? No, we're not. We're not playing double block. We're playing sheep's head. And then the Germans were like, fine, we're just going to tax you for it, okay? But the Japanese took that very, very seriously. So when they decided to ban the gaming, the band hammer came down hard. So the only card from this pack that an actual fragment survives is this king right here, which the nice thing is it gave me the color scheme. So I know what palette I have to work with. From a card maker point of view, that's all I need, because the king is always going to have the most colors on him. Sometimes, if you look at a Spanish suit of cards, some of the cards only have a little red and yellow on them, whereas the king and the queen, or the king and the knight and the jack, will have purple and silver on them and all this other stuff. But this one, like I said, it's a king, and he's got some green and red and yellow on him. So how did I get the rest of the pack? Well, I used the color placement from the dragon cards, in which I had a complete color palette from. So, put this color here, put this color there. But the plate, remember, plates tend to be made of good quality wood. The Europeans usually use pear wood because it doesn't have cross fibers, and that plate can last for a long, long time. Using overlapped borders. Okay. But the rest of the cards to this pack, someone took the printing plates and made a bento box out of them. And that bento box still exists, and it's in a museum, and the museum put high-def photos of it online. So all I had to do was reverse it and then put the dragon card colors on it.
Wow.
So that's an example of how I revived these cards. But this pack dates to the latter half of the 1500s.
Somebody's shopping on your store, so that's good.
Well, thank you for visiting. And I try to update. I'm working on a pack right now from France that features the worthies, which is kind of a medieval Christian thing, and it's tricky because there are 9 worthies, and you only get 4 spots per court, you get 4 kings, you get 4 queens. So I'm like, how do I do this pack? I don't know. I've got another pack in the works. There's a fragment that exists from the late 1400s where it's technically French suited, but instead of trèfle, instead of a club with 3 leaves and a stem, it is a quatrefoil. It is 4 leaves, no stem. And then instead of diamonds, it has a suit of crescent moons. Ooh. Wow. And there are wild people with hairy bodies, like you see in that Venetian deck that I have. Yeah. And I hope to get it done as soon as possible. Like I said, current health concerns have been taxing. Please be kind to your customer service people, because they may agree with you politically, and it has nothing to do with whether or not it's right to berate them one way or another. We're tired, so it's taken all my creative flow out of me. But fortunately, I have a website, And it's been nice to be able to wake up and say, oh, look, I have to pack something up to sell it. The nice thing about these is because they're already old, they never become outdated. So I've always got, it's a question of whether or not people are interested in the topic.
Yeah.
And yeah, as y'all have noticed at this point, if you've been to my site, I really only have one Tarot at this time. I'd like to finish that. The Venetian deck is what happened the last time I tried. Like I said, that result came out more naturally from those fragments. So,
Heather, you know what I could see you doing, honestly, and I'm gonna be like the devil whispering in your ear here. But have you ever seen the Marshmallow Marseille? The Marshmallow Tarot de Marseille?
I may have.
Well, they made two. It's an interesting pack because okay, so this is the Marshmallow, but this is the kind of thing I could see you doing too with tarot, like some sort of Marseille. This is based on I forget the name of the deck. It's an Italian Marseille, but maybe you'll be able to tell me.
Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. That's really cool. And yes, the Luna Sauvage is the pack. If that's right, I did put it on my site. The Luna Sauvage is the one that I'm working on that will have that. I've got the xylographs. I've got the black and white the line drawing part done. I just need to put the colors on it. I have to treat it like a color.
I always want to see a Tarot de Marseille, but I would like to see you. Basically, my point was I'd like to see you hand draw a Tarot de Marseille. I think that would be great.
There's some fragments. Like I said, my rule is generally I try to find things that are 1600 and older, because the crowd where I set up merchant tables tends to be interested in that. The other thing with Marseille is a lot of them are already done, so I don't want to interfere with anybody else's work, et cetera, et cetera. I would like to focus on one based on the oldest fragments that I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all can message me if you've got a suggestion. So it is definitely something. See, I'm not going to lie to you. Tarot sell. So I am always interested in a tarot. There are a lot of
many people who are interested in tarot now.
Yeah, it's well, and regardless of what your views of what tarot are, they are magnificent art and have rich, complicated history in their own right. So
they got a lot of faces, whereas the other ones have court cards. I think that's part of the thing too, is that there's a lot of action on tarot cards. When you're looking at them, there's a lot of characters to see.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
But one thing I really love about someone like you is that you're a working person, you're an artist, and you have a store. And I really love to support people who are like that, because that's one great thing about this kind of interest is that somebody who works can have like a side business doing stuff like this, and it's of value for card history too. And so I just love it. I love all of your decks. This is another one I pulled out too that I have. I have 4 of your decks. I need to get there and get a couple of more. But
and I'm gonna make a confession. I don't like that cardstock.
You don't like this cardstock? I
don't like the cardstock that ended up being on that, and I've never had that cardstock redone.
It was glossier or something. But do you still print the Freiburg or no?
That fragment. Oh, that's Dr. Best. So my Jokers, because Jokers again are Civil War era, and I cater largely to a pre-1600 history nerd group. So all of my Joker cards are members of the SCA. So on that, if somebody found the Dijon, that this gentleman, his name is Master John Inchingham, for example. So that's a real person.
What deck is that? What deck is that you're holding?
I call this one Dijon. And you know it because it's the Burgundy xylographs. A Burgundy pack because he's got all that armor on, the Jack of Clubs. You see all that lovely armor. And obviously I've replaced the original manufacturer's name with my own. and the heraldry in the corner is my own heraldry. But yeah, that's so they've got Italian style backs, and because I'm the manufacturer, yeah, I put my name on the back. Darn right I did. But the line drawings from this, and I'll also admit to you, they're not the same. This is one of the packs that is not the correct size. It's a detail I overlooked because it wasn't important because it was a hybrid pack. Like I said, the line drawings to this come from Burgundy just before 1600, but the palette comes from the same pattern, but they look a little different. It wasn't a complete pattern. The pack of cards was not complete, so I didn't have all the courts. So instead, I went with one where I had all of the xylographs.
That was the Angelo Valla. I couldn't think of the name of it.
And if you see this card in that pack, this is what the people in Burgundy called it, because that Jack has a little feather in his hat. So that's a weird pack that I have. But yeah, all my jokers are SCA people and real people. That wizard is Dr. Best, and he is he does study divination and those sorts of things from say Queen Elizabeth's time.
Okay.
So if you know who Dr. John Dee was, who was a real person and would have been described as a wizard, my friend Dr. Best bases his character a lot off of Dr. John Dee. And he'll give you a tarot reading and so on and so forth. I don't usually do that at events. I do readings privately. Message me if you want one, but it's nowadays I focus again more on the maker, and I try to compartmentalize those things because they're very different mindsets.
You had some cool games too. This is one I have, which I actually really like, and I found it interesting that you specialize in these games. So if you're looking for like something fun to play with the family or like take on vacation or something, Heather has all these really interesting packs. So this is the one, the Mongol one. Yeah.
This is the one where people come to me and say, okay, I was at this party last night and we got really, really drunk and we were playing this really fun game. It's poker. It's just poker. And each suit is a repeat of the same card. And so, like, you're a beginner poker player, maybe you're young and aren't as masterful with the intuition of playing poker. Maybe you're a history nerd fighter and you're punchy from the battlefield. Maybe you've had a little too much to drink. Whatever. It's kind of a simplified poker game, and because the construction is different. My 52 card packs, even if they weren't made that way originally, like I said, Spanish cards, they didn't have 10s. I make 10s. German cards didn't usually have aces. I make aces. None of them had jokers. I make jokers. My tarots don't come with jokers. Because this pack is so different in construction, it does come with rules. I did that have a little sheet, but the rest of them, it's like you want to play poker with it, you want to play gin rummy with it. I make it so that you play whatever you want as long as you're playing. And
I like this card stock. I don't know where you got this, but whichever one you need for this.
It's the same, and I'm always looking to. That's a better card stock than the Freeboard. It's the same for most of my packs. I'm always looking to improve to find a little more authentic of a paper, which would have been thicker and finer. They made better paper then than they make now. We can make paper like that, but nobody bothers. And it would have been, polished by hand, and so this is what works for now. But I'm always paying attention to see if I can improve things like that. Gosh darn, I'm sorry.
I keep hearing meowing off in the distance in my apartment. I'm wondering if I don't know what's going on with one of my cats is meowing like crazy though. That's why I kept looking over. I'm like, what's going on? I just hear meow, meow, meow.
My beastie has fortunately been undisruptive, and he's very good at being disruptive.
Very, very cool.
Cardstock is something I'm always I want to find the best cardstock.
Yeah.
I don't round the corners because it wasn't done. That's a 19th century innovation. And if I do that, my SCA customers will be like, well, that's not period. Yes, they make your cards last longer.
Actually. I prefer square corners on historic cards.
It's authentic. Now, because I'm the only person making an ASNES right now that I know of, I am looking to make it on more like a bicycle cardstock, more of a mundane, do a mundane run of it, because it's poker and people are into poker. But this is the pack that I sell at my table. A friend of mine came to me and said, I teach how to play ASNES. And he was taking a bicycle, 5 bicycle packs and breaking them apart and putting them together. And well, you know what that looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like 5 bicycle packs mashed up. And so I had to draw 5 face cards, the backs, and then the document card. That was not difficult for me to do. And it's one of my top sellers. But I'm telling you all, it's all crazy, stupid fun. It is a lot of fun. And if you're on the front page of my website, there is a picture of people playing a card game by candlelight. They are playing ASNES at 3 o'clock in the morning for handmade coins and little glass drops and stuff like that, because they don't like to use real money. Sometimes they use like handmade fancy jewelry and stuff like that, but they won't use real money. They won't put denomination on the coin or anything like that, because they don't want the feds to notice, especially since there's a whole group of people that do nothing but replicate coin making. And obviously they wouldn't fool anyone today into thinking they're modern coins, but the feds don't like people making their own coins. Sure. So we play for silly stuff, but that game is really a lot of fun to play, and I sell it to kids. I sell it to everybody. I know what I was going to say tangentially. There is a games tent at Penzic. Penzic is the big SCA event every year that was not held this year. It would be right now. It's about an hour north of Pittsburgh. It's about 10 to 15,000 people on a private campground in medieval garb. It looks a little bit like a Ren Fair, but it's all day participants, and it's a little more like a LARPer convention, but it's all history nerds. But there's a game tent, and they teach Tarocchi. They teach how to play the game Tarocchi in the tent, but they use a gummy bear tarot. And so the young people, the very, very young kids will come and say, we would like to play the gummy bear game. And they want to play Tarocchi. They want to play, a trick-taking game that's centuries old, and they play it with a gummy bear tarot. And it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
I was
going to say it's great for history. I mean, it's absolutely great for history.
But it's a game. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Heather, we've been on for an hour and a half, and I've really enjoyed this. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you need to, any upcoming announcements you have to make about your blog or anything?
Forgive me. Like I said, I was a total twit and didn't even realize. I thought we were alone. I'm like, oh my god, there's people chatting. I'm so not a technical master. That's another reason I do things with pen is, by the time I've refreshed myself with all the updates of a graphics program, I could have had another pack done. So I just draw them out, and then they're my hand done drawings. And again, I keep them in a safety deposit box, and they're mine, and they'll last. So it's proven to be a very enlightening thing. I've met a lot of amazing people through this study because, again, be it tarot or just playing cards or the history of the two together, there's reasons people are fascinated by its history. Again, I played with my grandma. I love it when I get, and this is why when I teach my class or when I have my table, I don't have an age group available, because you get a 6-year-old who cannot wait to whoop grandma's butt at gin rummy. And, he will handle those cards like an old salt, like an experienced player. And then I get college age people who handle them like children. So it's kind of it depends on your mindset thing. And it's wonderful because I meet amazing people. And, thank you all for bothering to want to know anything more about my stuff. Thank you so much. And yeah, if there's anything I missed,
No.
by the way, who's Hen? Because
Hen is my friend Jen. So Jen from Science to Soul.
Jen, I've also been. In my youth, I went by Hen, and so I'm like, wait a minute, who's got secrets on me? Okay, now I know.
And that's our Hen. She's awesome. She has a channel called Science to Soul, Jen Science to Soul Tarot.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm honored to, like I said, part of the fun of this is, like I said, I just think about it as I'm just the card maker. They all go off to different homes and live different lives and have different experiences. And some of them will hopefully be used for Taraki, and some of them will hopefully be used for divination. And I want them to have as unique of experiences as the cards in hundreds of years ago would have had. And this is the only way to get it done. The history nerds sometimes are like, well, how come you don't make your own paper? How come you don't do your own printing process? I'm like, that's not what I'm trying to resurrect.
Well, you're a drawing artist too. I mean, like for me, I think that this is great. It's like, and you also charge a very reasonable price. If you're making your own paper, you're going to have to charge a couple $100 a deck.
And then no one will play with them or use them. They'll hold them like it's fragile. And that's counterproductive. I need them to be, I want people to not be afraid to touch them.
Yeah. The one thing I loved about your store was the prices. I was like, wow. I was like, I haven't paid prices like these in a very long time because
And if you get me at my table, at a merchant table, I have a little more room to haggle. My website is managed by my husband, and the way he set things up, I don't have as much flexibility. If you find me at my merchant table, like I said, usually at Pensick, I like my cards in people's hands because then they get used.
Yeah, you sound like someone else I know. I have a friend who's like that too. He's an artist, and he's very much into people just using the cards, but look, paper's expensive, inks even work, like using real. I want to use real ink pigment, so it's like,
yeah, what if it's real lead? And they did. I just made an Egyptian paint palette because I'm a big old Egypt nerd, and I put orpiment in it. That's arsenic sulfide. Don't lick. Do not lick. That old scribes would with their brush, right? So yeah, that's one of the nice things. I don't have to use anything dangerous anymore. But yeah, if I can't get them out the door at a reasonable price, then they don't live. Then it's not a living pattern.
Yeah.
I want you people to play with them. And for again, in the history nerd group, I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I made a pack of cards," and then they did. They made paper, and they carved the xylograph, and they printed it, and they printed a run of like 20 of them and gave them to their best friends. And I will never get my hands on one of these. Yeah. And the people who have those will treasure them like fragile little bits. That pack of cards at the Cloisters with the oval, there's a reason it survives, and it's because it was so precious that and you hold it like it's eggshells, and I don't want that's not a living. Yeah, it's not
meant to be played. I get it.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I do.
I cut discounts to people who say I can't use this pack anymore. It's just so worn out, because it means it was played with.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've seen them used for divination and gaming, and it's like. Good, it's getting used.
Hi, Masha. Masha just came in, and anybody I miss, I'm sorry. I'm so bad with keeping up with the chats. I'm very bad at the whole chat thing, but I really appreciate everybody coming tonight to listen to Heather. Heather, I appreciate you so much. If you're interested in Heather's shop, all the information's in the info section. She has a lot of great stuff. Playing cards. She has a Minchiate tarot deck. We showed a few of the decks today. So if you missed part of it, you just watch back. And Heather, I thank you so much for doing this. Really, it was just a pleasure.
It's an honor to be here. I'm honored that you asked.
I felt like I learned so much just listening to you. It was great. So We'll have to do it again sometime. We'll definitely have you back on.
I'm not a garment Laurel. I don't know, but go for it.
If you ever hang out, don't go anywhere. Because I'll be able to chat with you backstage here. I'm just going to end the broadcast. But thanks again, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. And until next time, love and peace, everyone. Just end the broadcast here.